as Conservatives, we support you guys 100% in what you're doing to supporting Ukraine. As we all know, Operation Unifier and the first donations of military equipment happened under a previous Conservative government. And it's something I'm very proud of, and I can tell you that as the official opposition, the Conservative Party has supported the government in every effort that it's made in supporting Ukraine in this brutal war against the Russian invaders. We will continue to do so, and in fact, we've actually asked the government to do more. One of those things that we've been asking for is to provide more armored vehicles to Ukraine. In my recent trip to Ukraine, Pat and I heard directly from both the Office of the President and the Ministry of Defense that they love the Leopard tanks. They love the Senators that we provide and would love to get more. But they also know that donations of things like LAVs and M113s, track LAVs have been well used in Ukraine, donated from other countries. We are in the process of decommissioning hundreds of older stock that are considered surplus and wore out. I know that Armatech in London has made a proposal to the Government of Canada to refit those vehicles and send them to Ukraine. They can do 8 a month. The Australians and the Americans have said that they would partner in on this if Canada would lead. They have surplus vehicles as well, which Armatech could re-armor, retool, and put in the fight. Where are we at as the Government of Canada and the Canadian Armed Forces in donating these surplus decommissioned vehicles to Armatech and ultimately to Ukraine?
Thank you. Chair, it's a pleasure to be here. Ty Curran, I'm the Deputy Director General for International Security Policy. Sort of the process by which we identify donations that we're providing to Ukraine is relatively straightforward. So at the heart of it is items that Ukraine has asked us for, and we get that through a number of different methods, particularly through the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, which is meeting today in Ramstein, Germany, but as well as directly from the ambassador and Ukrainians that have reached out to us. I think we've worked very hard to ensure that we're meeting those priorities by sending armored vehicles, by sending tanks, by sending some of the other items that the general mentioned. We do have a $500 million funding envelope that's available in this fiscal year to help support Ukraine.
Has that been allocated, or is that still available to other donations?
So parts of it have been allocated. So you would have seen over the weekend the minister made an announcement about our support for an air defense partnership, and so some of that money came out of that allocation. But there are funds that remain in that space, and we continue to look at ways that we can support Ukraine.
So in previous tranches of money that has been earmarked for supporting Ukraine, there's the NASAMS air defense missile system that we were purchasing from the United States. Has that been delivered?
No, it has not.
When will the Ukrainians actually get that piece of kit, which we promised months ago?
So we're working with the United States who produced this piece of equipment, and we're hoping that that's going to be available soon, but there is a production timeline that goes along with that.
So under Operation Unifier, we sent over a number of our Canadian soldiers to help train Ukrainians on our Leopard 2s. That work is completed. Have those soldiers come home, or have they been retasked with other duties in Operation Unifier or under NATO while they're stationed in Europe?
So, again, developing story here. Recently, in discussions with Poland, there was no demand signal for our training, our troops training on Leopard 2. But lately, a couple of weeks ago, we've been asked again to throw another course together. So we do have 24 members there conducting what we think is going to be maybe one of the last serial of Leopard 2 training. If there's more asked, we'll be ready to answer again.
I'd like to begin just by echoing the remarks of Mr. Bazan and affirm just how strongly we in the opposition support the work of the government in its support of Ukraine, and remind anybody that had forgotten that the previous government was there in 2014 and launched Operation Unifier, and so we continue to stand with Ukraine and call on the government to do more and do better to support Ukraine. So back to the issue of shells. Has there been an increase in Canadian production in the last year over year?
I wouldn't have that question. That the answer to the question would have to check with the company. I know our Deputy Minister Material, Associate Deputy Minister Material, is dealing with the company. Have they increased their production? Will they increase their production?
Okay, which
We'll
company are
have
you
come
referring
back.
to?
JDOTS.
And is this at the facility located north of Montreal?
Correct.
Okay, so it's still not operating and not,
I wouldn't be able to answer that question, but we can come back with the answer
Okay.
to this question.
I think it's been a year since this was identified as an area that where Canadian production could be employed. Is there a sense of urgency in getting this factory up and running?
Yeah, so that's the point I was making just earlier here. I think there's a point where we have to negotiate with industry, but Canadian demands alone won't be enough maybe to satisfy that industry. So, but that industry needs to recognize that there's a global market for this here, and we're
Okay,
dealing with
but
that
to
issue
meet
right
global markets, they will require export certification from Global Affairs. Is that going to be expeditiously, will they be able to do that immediately? Is there, what steps has Global Affairs taken to ensure that the companies have the assurance that they can, in fact, export any surplus that the Canadian forces wouldn't take?
I'm not in charge of export controls, but I do know, my team's involved in the process at Global Affairs, that we have developed a special and fast process for clearing exports to Ukraine in terms of military exports. And we work alongside D&D on it, so I'm aware of a special procedure for that. But I unfortunately don't have all the details, not in charge of it. I can get back to you.
I would appreciate if you did. If there's anything you could table with the committee. I mean, we heard repeatedly in the various bases that the committee visited in the summer, and as well as James and I when we were in Ukraine, that we heard the 155 shells are. I mean, they are perhaps the hottest military commodity for our allied forces that use that caliber of weapon, and getting them built is critical to the entire defense. We heard that repeatedly, that artillery capability is what holds back the ability to clear minefields and to actually advance into Russian positions that are extraordinarily well defended at this point.
And in the CAN4Gen, there was a memo that came out from on September 6th from Deputy Minister Bill Matthews and CDS General Eyre. And in it says, as one of the largest federal departments, national defense has an important role to play in effective and efficient government operations. Early efforts are now underway across the defense team to address our part in this initiative by developing spending reduction options. So my question is this reductions going to impact our ability to support Ukraine, to support our allies in NATO, and of course continue to recruit and retain our forces so that we can take care of things at home here as required?
We are going through the analysis right now. The one thing we're not touching on the spending reduction is the money that's been allocated to our operations there. So there shouldn't be an impact to what we do in Ukraine or what we do in Latvia in what we're looking into the spending reductions right now.
I can tell you that when we were there as committee, it was a sombering experience to see our troops training Ukrainian recruits. You know, when I was last in Ukraine under Operation Unifier, and we, as a committee, a number of years ago, went to Yavoriv, where we were training Ukrainians along with the Americans and the Brits. You know, we're training experienced soldiers. Now we're training green recruits. And I just wanted to say to all of our forces who are working in Operation Unifier, as well as all those that are working in NATO, including those that are serving in the brigade in Latvia at EFP, NATO, just outside at Ziza. I just want to say thank you for your service. Thank you for standing up for Ukraine. Thank you for standing against the Russian aggression that we're experiencing, not just in Ukraine, but right across the NATO eastern flank and in our Arctic.